Right, so I'm installing a boiler and the piece of timber I need has fell down this little gap. And as soon as I looked down here, I felt like I was in one of them games from the film Saw because it looked like my arm was gonna get absolutely shredded just to get what I needed. Luckily, it wasn't too bad because I had my jumper on. If I didn't have my jumper, I think it'd be a different story. But this is going to be a video showing you a daily life of a tradesman, or more specifically for me, a gas engineer. So we're working on a Worcester for this repair, and you can see something's leaking on the right hand side here. Um, I just realized the container that the customer put has got a hole in it. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, so something's leaking on the right hand side, and I guess the container was supposed to catch the water, but it's obviously not because there's a hole in it. So what I'm doing is I'm doing the front panel so I can see what's leaking. Now, just a little bit of background. The customer says that they're not having to top up the pressure at all, so it's probably going to be on the cold water circuit. So that's why I'm taking a look at this flow turbine, because sometimes they can leak. But only thing I can really see leaking is from the PRV area. Now, they said 100% they're not topping up the pressure. So only thing I can think of is maybe one of the seals on the plate has failed, or the right hand block has split at the back. So that's what we're going to be doing, taking a look at where it's leaking from. And if I zoom into the back, you can see there's quite a lot of gunk on the plastic. So something's been leaking. I'm going to guess it's split. You can see water's dripping from a few places. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip out this right hand block and get swapped over. Also, while I'm here as well, I'm going to take out and change this AAV because that's obviously been leaking at some point. So quickly pop to the shop, got a new right hand block, got an AAV, and now I just need to swap them over. So first things first, going to isolate the flow and return because the boiler is downstairs. So isolating the flow and return because this repairs on the central heating circuit. Also going to isolate the cold because it's on the hot water circuit as well. But I'm also going to isolate the gas because I feel like if you remove the gas pipe on this repair, it gives you a lot more room. So we're also going to be isolating that as well. So when working on a Worcester, I always like to spray a lot of the fittings with WD-40 because I feel like these get really seized sometimes and they're really hard to undo. So all the connections I'm going to undo, going to spray with WD-40 first. So when I get to it, hopefully it's a little bit easier to open. Now, while the boiler is draining, also going to charge the expansion vessel because they're just always flat. No one ever services their boiler. So yeah, I'm going to charge that. What that'll do is push out any excess water and make the repair a little bit quicker. Now, on this Worcester, first thing, remove this horrible condensed track that's just right in your face. So take off the black tube, push up this little pin and twist it right, and then it will pull towards you and come out. So it's been a few minutes now, so hopefully the WD-40's done its thing a little bit. But you can see with this gas pipe, it's still quite stiff. I almost knocked my phone out of my hand, but the other two aren't too bad. Now with this gas pipe, I don't actually take it out of the boiler. I just undo both connections so I can move it. That way I've got more space for the pump to start left. But let's undo these little clips and then take out the pressure gauge and undo this top clip so we can take out the hose for the expansion vessel as well. So now we're at a point where we need to do this weird clip. So we're just going to squeeze that, twist it to the right, and then I kind of just lift that up so the pump can just slide out. And that is the cold water out. Sometimes it does come with the turbine, sometimes it doesn't, but you'd be taken out anyway with this repair, so it doesn't really matter. And that is the pump out. And at this point I do panic a little bit because it's caught on the cable and there's water dripping on the PCB. So I'm thinking, oh, I really hope I ain't damaged the PCB. There are some cons to obviously recording one hand, doing the job with one hand, but I do get lucky. But yeah, I need to be more careful. Now, this boiler's got pipes running down the back of it, so not going to get as much play in the plate as I usually would, but because this right hand block kind of unhooks and comes forward, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. Main thing is that this screw just undone all the way. Now, last little thing is just this little PRB tab. So once you pull that tray down, the right hand block should be ready to come out. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to record me doing this one hand. I do need two hands to do this, but I do have a full beginning to end repair in the back of the van on taking out the right hand block. So if you want to see that, I've got a GoPro on my head, you can see everything. I'll put a link in the description. But in terms of how you take it out, literally push it to the right and wiggle it towards you, and it will eventually come out. You might have to spray WD-40 on the fitting on the left, but with a bit of strength and a bit of patience, it will come out. So while the pump's out, also going to change over this AAV as well. So just twist it, pull it out, and then the new one, reverse order. Push it in, twist it, and it'll be in. So set up my new return manifold now, put the old copper pipe in, PRV, and that little nut at the bottom. Now, literally same thing in reverse order. Just gonna hook it round, push it in. Now, first thing I'll usually do is this screw on the right. That usually shows that the right hand block is in the right place. So then it's just doing up the screw on the plate and rebuilding it slowly. Now you see this clip, the first time I ever had to do this, I think I struggled for about a good 10-15 minutes. I was getting so mad. But yeah, once you find the way to get in, there's a specific way, it is quite easy to get in. Again, the video I've got in the back of the van, I walked through how to do that. But yeah, I just remember struggling with that the first time I done it. So that's everything pretty much put back together now. But then I realized I forgot to put this clip in. So I'm going to quickly chuck in this clip and that's it. So at this point, I've unisolated everything, I've filled back up and nothing seems to be leaking. So far so good. Just going to do all my safety checks, make sure the boiler is safe to be operating and move on to the next job. But yeah, this one wasn't too bad. So this variant here was actually an interesting one because it's one I almost messed up on, and it's why I always believe in getting a second opinion, because sometimes it does just save you. So you can see I've turned on the switch for the fuse spur, boiler's completely dead, no power, and when I check here, it's dead. When I checked with my multimeter as well, getting nothing. So next thing I'm going to do is check the fuse inside the fuse spur. It could be blown, and it was dead. So now I've turned the fuse spur back on, there's power going to the boiler, and I think cool, working all good. But if you just let the sequence run, this happens. Just cuts off and you can't turn it back on. So now I'm just checking to see if it's blowing the fuse in the fuse spur or if it's blowing the fuse in the boiler. But I'm still getting power to the boiler. So the fuse inside the fuse spur is fine. The interesting thing is, if I test continuity on the fuse, you can hear it's got continuity, it works perfectly fine. But if I put a new fuse in, the boiler comes on. But if I put the old fuse in, it doesn't work. I was just a bit confused because I've never had this before. So what I do is I just let the boiler run to see when it cuts out. So pump's running perfectly fine, but when it goes to get to the fan, that's when it seems to cut out. And the reason I say it's really weird is because it's not actually blowing the fuse. The power just seems to turn off. But if you leave the boiler, keep the exact same fuse, leave the boiler for about 5 minutes, try to turn it back on, it will work again, but then it'll go through that same motion. So what I done is I called Valent, I explained it to them, and they ran me for a few checks, and it turns out it was something completely different. They told me to do a few checks on X51, and it turns out it's the PCB. It needs a new PCB. But I honestly would have thought it was the fan, because as soon as I plugged the fan in, the boiler was tripping, cutting off. But Valent said it's not. They've had something similar to that same day, actually, the guy was telling me. So here's the process of me changing over the boards, and let's see if the board fixes it. Okay, so at this point, everything's plugged in. It needs to move this RT because we've got a thermostat. And moment of truth. And there you go, all fired up. Threw a little thumbs up because I was glad it worked, because I had about 5 other jobs to go to and I didn't want to stay on this for too long. So glad this was working. Do my quick safety checks and then we can move on to the next job. Okay, so working on a main Combi HE, and the issue is heating works perfectly fine but no hot water. So customers just run the hot tap and you can see the pin's not coming out. Now 99% of the time when the customer's got heating but not hot water in this boiler, it usually just is this little diaphragm. So what we'll do is test it by pushing that micro switch there. You can see boiler fires up and then the hot water does slowly start getting hot. So it's just going to be that diaphragm, rubber seal, whatever you want to call it. So what we're going to do is strip it out and get that changed over. So for this, nice and easy repair, only need to isolate the cold mains going in and just remove this little screw that holds the switch in place. Then we've just got this little screw at the top we're going to undo. And then we just got these 6 screws to undo. Now I always put a bucket or some type of tissue underneath because water's always going to come out when I do this. So take out these screws and we should be able to see the seal. So everything here looks to be in good shape. Spring's fine, this little plastic cone isn't snapped. So just going to look at the rubber seal next. Now usually when I take these seals out for this particular fault, they're usually perished quite a lot or they've got big splits in them. I'd say this is the best looking one I've seen. I took it out, couldn't really find any holes in it. There was a really small split in it. So I thought that's got to be the reason why. So putting this one back in now and we'll see if it works. So just about to unisolate the cold and moment of truth. There you go. Pins coming in and out as it shoot with the hot water. So it just goes to show, even if there is a tiny split in that seal, it can be enough for it to not work. So I did actually take a video of the tiny split it had, so I'll try to attach it after this so you can see what it looks like. Perfect. So this is the split here. It's tiny. It's so small you can barely see it. But what I've done is I put a flashlight behind it to give you an idea of what it actually looks like. But while I'm here, the customers also asked me to quickly clean out the magnetic filter. So also going to isolate and clean that. But you can see it's not really that dirty. Still going to clean it, put it back in anyway. But yeah. And that's it. All put it back together, gonna bleed it, make sure there's no leaks, and then I can move on to the next job. So this is the video the customer sent me. He's having issues with this Ideal, so we're going to be replacing it with a Valent. Now it is in a tiny, tiny little room. It's like Harry Potter's room in here. So we're going to be installing it, and it's going to be really fun for me. So let's take a look. So to start the day off right, we've got a nice frozen U gauge here. So I'm going to have to defrost that so I can do my tightness test. And once I've done that, I'm going to start taking the boiler apart. So the flue hasn't been cemented properly, so it's nice and easy to take out, which we love. So push that forward, take this little clip off, and that's the top of the boiler ready to go. Now it's just draining it down and the pipe work. So you can see here, boiler's not really in the greatest of shapes. Looks like it's been leaking products of combustion. They said they had a few other problems, so it's a good thing they're changing it. So to drain down the boiler, just going to use the PRV because it's nice and simple. So condenser has been disconnected and cut, same with PRV, and I've disconnected all of the valves from the boiler. So now the boiler should be ready to come off the wall. So usually when you're installing a Valent or any boiler, to be honest, they give you a nice little template so you can know exactly where the boiler needs to line up in terms of the flue, any type of clearances. But you can see, because there's a gap between the boiler and the actual flue hole, it makes it hard to see where that's going to be. So we're going to do it with a tape measure. So you can see this makes it a lot easier to see that distance. And I measured it on the template, and it's about 7.5 inches ish that it needs to be. So measured down 7.5, and now I know where my bracket needs to go. But as I showed you in the beginning of the video, I need to try get this bit of wood out from the bottom. And yeah, at first I thought it was going to be horrible, my hands are going to get wrecked, but I did manage to get it out. It wasn't too bad. I think when I unscrewed the old bracket, this made it fall down. I didn't know it was there, otherwise if I did, then I wouldn't have let it fall. But managed to get it out, and now I can reuse it. And that is what you call perfection. So as I said, basically working in Harry Potter's cupboard is tiny in here. So boiler only fit in one way. So I'm gonna try slide it through, and then I can struggle to hang it. And there you go, boiler's on the wall and it is not going anywhere. And flue lines up absolutely perfect. Now in terms of piping it up, I've literally got what, hand space. So I'm gonna be on my belly, it's gonna be real fun, but let's get into it. And for those of you wondering, am I really laying down? Yes, I am, and my leg was falling asleep. I was getting pins and needles, had to keep switching sides, but yeah, what can you do? So I measured and cut the flue, and as soon as I cut it, I panicked because I thought, right, this looks way too small. But it actually was fine. I think that's just the smallest I've ever cut a flue. So flue was fine, just gonna put everything all together, clamp it. And that's the flue all done. Okay, so that's all of the valves on now. Now I'm not going to connect the filling loop. just because it gives me space to tighten that cold nut. Once that cold nut is done, then I'll connect the filling loop. Now, normally I would record me pressing everything, but I was absolutely dying because I was laying down, so I quickly banged it out. But all the pipes are done now, filled up, it's all good. Just gonna do my thermostat, and that's it. And this is the final result. So PRVs go straight through the wall. Same with the condense already ran to a drain. I just had to reconnect to it. And testing the thermostat, all good. So that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. Again, as usual, if there's anything could have done different, let me know in the comments below. Any questions, I'll try to answer them. I've linked all the tools that I've used in the description below, so you can get them if you want to. Sometimes I do get questions about what's this or what's that, what brand do you use, so that's all in the description. And if you do want to get access to the boiler training, there's 100 different pieces of content on there. I'm always updating it monthly. So again, that's in the description, and I'll see you in the next video.